I'm going to say the same sentence twice, and you tell me which one has you hooked and wanting to listen. I'm going to tell you about something that changed my life, and it will change yours too. Or I'm going to tell you about something that changed my life and will change yours too. Same sentence, different vocal variety. See, the thing is, last week I talked about what you need to do to open a speech, but you could open the speech pretty well and still lose the room. Why? Because of the fact that your vocal variety is stale. You might not even have vocal variety. So the whole thing about your intonation, your tone, your pitch, your volume, your rhythm, your accent, we are fixing that today. So stick with me and let's get it. Let's talk about this, right? So we need to figure this out. I'm going to talk to you about a moment when my vocal range, my difference of vocality, of variance with my voice made a difference. So let me talk to you about this, right? I'm here in a room, in the Bronx, New York specifically. Shout out Bronx, my hometown. And let me tell you, right? I walk in to two schools that day, right? I walk to a school of one demographic. I walk into a school of a different demographic, a high school, a middle school, differences, right? And in the speech that I was speaking, I talked about the difference between you good. And immediately I got two different responses, like two different reactions. And I was just kind of like, explain to me like what's different? Explain to me what's different about what happened. Well, the way that I deliver you good is different based on the person that I'm speaking to, based on the nature of our relationship, based on the information I have about them. So if I say, yo, you good? That's kind of like endearment, concern, like, okay, checking up on you. Depending on the way I move, sometimes, if I say you good, it looks like I'm about to fight. But again, the high schoolers may be like, nah, that's fighting words. And middle school is just kind of like, it just depends. Because it also depends on the demographic. One in the Bronx and one downtown in New York. Differences. That literally is boiled down to me saying the same words, but the way that I deliver it being different. If I tone up, it sounds exciting. It sounds like I'm curious. It sounds like I want to know what's going on. If I tone down, it's deferential. Sometimes it's like, no, matter of fact, we're done, period. Now we're going to talk about how to build this. So let's start off with this. Your words are only a part of the equation. The rest of it boils down to 4 takeaways: your speed, your volume, your pitch, your pauses. And the wild part about all this is your words only account for 7% of your actual impact. 93% has nothing to do with your words, so we got to go through it. Again, we talk about speed, we talk about volume, we talk about pitch, we talk about pauses. So let's get into it. So, with the speed, the first tool in your voice is speed. How quick, how slowly are you going? Are you manipulating your pacing based on the situation? So, most people, especially when they're nervous, do one thing. They speed up. The anxiety, the adrenaline, because you have uncertainty. It's hard. It's real. Of course, that makes sense. But they race through their content like they want to get off the stage as soon as possible, even though they wanted to get on stage to begin with. But then it's like, what makes you anxious? What makes you nervous? And why are you letting that affect you more than what you came here to do? You need to understand that nothing will stand out if everything is scattered. It's just not gonna. So the audience is going to have this struggle. Like if I keep going and going and going and never slowing down because I have so many things to say and I gotta say it as fast as possible, then you just end up struggling and you are gonna lose people. So with that being said, think about your pacing. Feel it. Pause. Maybe things have to be anxious so that you can move with the audience, so that your audience can feel that this is quickening, this is happening, but then you have control. because of the fact that you know when to push the levers. It's not you being anxious and you being unclear. That's another thing. Clarity. You need to be clear no matter what speed you're going. I had some students that they literally don't sound clear. They're just slurring their words, and I don't know what they're saying. And it's sometimes they're speaking at the right pace, but the wrong clarity. So it's like we got to figure that out. Because otherwise, how else are we supposed to understand them? So think about this like driving, right? You can cruise 60 on a highway, but when you get to the spot that matters, you slow down. You know what I'm talking about? Like that spot specifically that you're like, man, no. There's some places you speed, some places you don't. That's just straightforward. You use discernment based on the nature of the situation. So that's something that knows. Sometimes you speed, sometimes you don't, but it depends. But in all cases, you need to be clear and you need to use the right speed. So that's the first takeaway, speed. Second, volume. This is a problem because most people think volume means loud. Like if I'm not yelling at you, I'm not impactful. And I talked to my students about this years ago. I'm like, there's a difference between me talking to you in a classroom and me talking to you in a gym. Like acoustics, you might be speaking in the stadium, you might be speaking in the back closet of like this mall. I've spoken at both, and I'm like, it depends. I've given the same speech in both, and I'm obviously not going to be just full-blown volume yelling it so like the broom flies into somebody's face because of like the reverberations of like my loudness. And I'm also not going to sound squeaky and small when I'm in a stadium in front of thousands of people. That doesn't make sense. You have to be very mindful of it. Same thing as if you're talking to a group of friends versus a friend versus whispering. Like volume needs to go with what you're speaking about. Also think about the pieces of your speech because some of your speech parts require you to lower your volume. Now, I say this in speech and debate all the time. Drama does not equal volume. Some people in dramatic interpretation will just like go quiet because they think they're serious and like deep if they do that. And it's like, no, that's like literally like the seasoning and all this. Like it's okay. Like it makes sense that that's what you would go for. But if you don't have depth behind what you say, then it doesn't really matter. It doesn't. So volume does not equal being dramatic. That's the truth. Again, also volume doesn't equal you have power. You just talk. You just yap. You're just there. Like, okay, copy. But you just blowing hot air. You're not doing anything. All bark, no bite. We know that, right? You're just barking louder? That's weird. So, with that being said, there are moments where you need to bring the energy up. I get it. But sometimes it doesn't really make sense. So audit what that looks like. Really think about that as you're speaking. And when you get quiet, people lean in. So be strategic about when you get quiet. You cannot just be quiet all the time. You also can't be loud all the time. Because if you just emphasize every word of every part of every speech you ever give, if everything is important, nothing is. If everything is important, nothing is. So, most speakers never go quiet because it feels vulnerable. It feels like you're losing control. It feels like, you have no power. It feels like you're playing small. I would argue the opposite. Strategic volume allows you to be able to command the audience a lot better. So again, in a lot of the speeches that I give, I know when I have to be quieter. I know when I have to be loud. I also know based on my demographic that I'm going to be changing. I was just talking to middle schoolers today. I know loud and like going all the places, they want that. And then when I'm quiet, serious, and giving really strategic instructions, they listen because everything was loud. But this mattered. That's what you want to play with. So first thing again is speed. Talk about that. Second thing is volume. Third, now we're going to talk about pitch. So with pitch, right, the highness or lowness that your voice sits at. Now, you're probably thinking, okay, well, that sounds like volume, but like it's worded differently. Stick with me. So, think about this, the way that you move when you're speaking. Like, to be loud is one thing, but then you might tone up, you might get shrill, you might squeak up. That's what I mean by pitch. You could have a low pitch, but sound like, you ever stubbed your toe and someone asks you immediately after you're fine, and you just give them like a, yeah, I'm fine. Think about that when it comes to your pitch and your tone. Think about when you enter or say certain things to people, it doesn't match. It doesn't hit the same. It's kind of like one of my coaches said it beautifully. You cannot give these two statements the same way. Volume isn't what we're talking about, it's pitch. You cannot say that my mother has an illness that she is recovering from and I'm hoping she's going to do okay, and I have a large cheeseburger with double fries. Those two things cannot be the same. So pitch is based on your words, but also think about your audience and think about why you're speaking. Why are you there? Like, if you're there to give a eulogy, that's not going to be something that you just come in with balloons. That doesn't make any sense. Consequently, change. Like, you also understand that if you're there for a strategic conversation, be mindful of the way that you speak. If people are more business, more airtight, more like focused, you need to have a commanding presence. If it's students, you have to match their energy and then bring them to where you want to talk to them. Like, that's going to be important. So, I think this program can really change how students communicate. If I say that, okay, got it, then I go all dark and I think this program can change the way that students communicate. Okay? I think this program can change the way that students communicate. So, three people, based on what you just heard, you imagine these three people are three different images, three different personas. They are three different walks. They have three different jobs, three different positions, probably within the same company. That doesn't mean that they're going to be treated the same because they're three different angles, three different people. So your pitch determines it. Now, mind you, in all three of those things, volume wasn't really that much of a factor, but the pitch was. So how are you delivering your speeches? Are you mindful of the people in the room? So we talk speed, we talk volume, we talk pitch. Now we got to talk about pauses. Yep. So with pausing, most people treat silence like it's a mistake. Like as if you stop talking and honestly, we're on to you. No. The one thing you're going to learn about being a speaker, about being a presenter, about being a classroom collaborator, a colleague, whatever you, all the C words, is I have command of this. I have command of this. I'm a champion by default. I don't think you understand that. So if that's your ideology going in, which means you have to acknowledge that you're scared, you have to own that you're scared. Match the people of the room of how they're feeling, understand that, and sympathize with that wavelength. Bring up that energy and leave them feeling like, wow, I really got something out of this. That's how you move through that. That's how you impact them. And the only way for you to do that is take that moment, take that pause, and realize, okay, I'm going to have to do this scared because I got a lot of people. But I'm going to go in and do that. I know what I have to deliver. I know what my mission is. Let me do it. So with the pausing, you get to choose the way that you move. What I mean by that is everything you've been told about your voice is wrong. See, pausing there. You were waiting. You wanted to know what happened next. That pause creates tension. Tension creates attention. Remember that. Tension creates attention. So there are three places to use a pause. One, right before your most important moment, like a spotlight. Like, you need to focus on this, which is why the kid that I was working with the whole emphasizing everything means you really don't care about anything. That's why this matters, because You should reserve the pausing for the important moments, for when you want to emphasize, for when you want to isolate, for when you want to focus on a point, a statement, a sentence, something. That's when you should be using a pause. That's one. Or two, right before a big statement. You'll let it breathe. You'll let it land, and people sit with it. And three, when you are transitioning between ideas, because it signals to the audience that one chapter has ended and a new one's about to begin. Like, because at the end of the day, when you say something, words. Words. And we move on. So you get to choose that, which is why you should really look through your speeches and figure out the moments that are important. The emphasis. For extempors, when I've been coaching them, use analytics. Those should be your important drivers, especially numbers. Like if you say 85% of people, emphasize that. 85% of people sounds different than you just generically saying everything the same. 1 in 4 people don't like McDonald's. 1 in 4 people, like 1 in 4 people don't like McDonald's. So McDonald's being an optimum word because that's a franchise, that's a name, that's a label, you want to do that. 1 in 4, that's a statistic, that's an analytic. Then you can probably emphasize the like. They don't like McDonald's. But then you could also say you should emphasize the don't, because that's what you want people to understand, is that it's negatory, it's bad. So you choose what you do with the pausing. And you saw this last week when we talked about opening with silence, right? But the pause isn't just an opening technique. You use that throughout the whole speech, because that shows how much command you have of the room. You know the best way for you to lose control is for you to keep talking when you don't have to. Like, you don't have to keep talking. You're good. Use it when it matters. Be strategic. Get it done that way. So when I'm talking about tying it all together, you talk about speed. And what was speed again? Speed was knowing when to push forward, when to pull back, when to use your moments, your pacing. Then you have volume. Again, high, low, depending on when you should yell or not yell. Like, that is very important. Be intentional, not accidental about this. Then you have pitch. Ending your statements like statements, not questions. Be very mindful of your volume, of your energy in your voice. Pitching and pausing. Every statement, every word, every sentence having its intentionality set. That meaning you are using this strat to say that I'm not rushing, to say that I'm not guessing, to say that I'm being strategic, I'm being smart, I'm being sharp, I'm being good. This is why I'm pausing the way that I am. Speed, volume, pitch, pause. So these 4 things are going to be amazing for you, because they're the difference between someone who wants to talk and someone who speaks, someone who really powers up people, because your voice is an underrated weapon that cannot be taken away. Like, you do understand that this is your optimal, focused, most important tool you can use. Your voice, your command of the stage, of presence of people, really doing that. So here's what I want you to do this week. I want you to pick one of the 4, just one. Whether that's speed, whether that's volume, whether that's pitch, whether that's pause. What I want you to do is practice it intentionally in a real conversation, not a stage, because that's weird. You just hijack a stage and you're like, oh no! No. Just use it in conversation and see how it moves people. See what it does. Slow down on purpose. Get quiet on purpose. Pause on purpose. And really key in on people and notice what happens. I promise you, I guarantee you, your conversations, your speaking will never be the same.